Welcome to the Pop Cult Online Power Hour, the video podcast dedicated to the 10-year-old in Oz. And I'm your host, Rick Gordon. Hey, does anybody want to take a guess as to what Bob Retall and I are going to talk about tonight? No guesses? No worries. We'll be right back after these brief messages.
Holy icicles!
In their daily pursuit of justice, our superhero characters do battle with the world's most evil villains. Where will the next evil villain come from? Maybe you will create them in Post Superheroes Create a Villain Contest.
Grand prize. 9 kids win a one-week trip to Hollywood. They'll have breakfast with these superheroes.
And the villain they've created.
Second prize, 1,000 win bicycles.
Millions will enter, and everyone who does gets Superheroes Puffy stickers.
Details on specially marked boxes of Alphabet, Super Sugar Crisp, Honeycomb, and Pebble cereals. You can draw and paint your villain in the picture provided. 3 different pictures.
Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman and Robin.
3 grand prizes per picture.
The most original villains win.
Holy Hollywood!
Post Superheroes Create a Villain Contest. Details on specially marked boxes of Alphabet, Super Sugar Crisp, Honeycomb, and Pebble.
Good, honey. Spider-Man. Whoa. Spider-Man cereal. Cool.
New Spider-Man cereal. It's the action-packed part of your balanced breakfast. Sweet, crunchy webs crawling with marshmallows like Hobgoblin's Pumpkin Bomb and the Kingpin. It's an adventure in every bowl.
You get something? Nope.
Spider-Man cereal, swinging into a store near you. Now there's a free exclusive Fleer Ultra Spider-Man card in specially marked boxes of
Hello,
Spider-Man
can you hear me this time?
Now I can hear you.
Probably hear me worse. I can't. There's something wrong with my massive, good quality microphone that I paid a lot of money for.
Wow, that's a nice one.
Well, if it worked, it would be. I don't know what's wrong with it. I mean, it was working before, and then, well, I know what's wrong. I mean, Windows installed some updates the other day, and that usually messes stuff up. So it's something funny with some setting that I just don't want to deal with trying to figure out right now while we're trying to record. So I'll have to figure it out.
You got all weekend. Hey, look. I don't know if you can tell, but these are 3D glasses.
Are they?
This one's red.
Do I look three-dimensional?
Yep. Because I was reading this. That is creepy. This is a really cool book for those of you who can see this. It's a 3D Batman comic from 1953. And I just bought it. I had it. I think I talked about this story last week, but I haven't had a chance to really look at it. And it features 2 Batman stories and a Tommy Tomorrow story. The quality of the 3D, it varies. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. The guy I bought it from graded this as a 2. I didn't think it was a 2 when I first started reading it, but the more I handle it, the more fragile it feels, so I think that was a fair. It's a good reader copy. That's why I bought a lower grade, because I'm not afraid to just, manhandle it, pick it up and read it, which is what you're supposed to do with comics. And down the road, if I want to get a minty fresh one that I can put in a slab, which I won't, but I can, so. And the reason I brought this up is because I am so disorganized that I recently found a book on the bookshelf, which is Amazing 3D. And it's got a lot of interesting sections on movies, comics, Mad Magazine, everything. So I've just been on a 3D kick lately. Even went out and bought a bunch of 3D glasses for my big screen TV. So
comics in the 3rd dimension.
Yeah. I think they tried it in the 80s, if I remember correctly. Late 80s, Ray Zone. put out a bunch of stuff, and it caught on for about a month, maybe 2, and then vanished.
Oh, he did. No, he did. The 3D Zone ran for, I think, maybe about 18 issues. And DC and Marvel both put out things. I mean, DC put out a 3D book sometime, as part of Final Crisis, I think.
Oh, really?
Put out a 3D Superman book that was terrible.
I know there's a Superman Red, Superman Blue 3D that I should be expecting in the mail any minute. There's also a vintage Superman 3D that's probably from this era, early to mid 50s, that I've never seen in the wild, but I'll try to track it down because I love comics so much, and unfortunately, it seems like the rest of the world doesn't. They love comic book characters, but not the source material, which brings us to tonight's topic. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah.
So my eyes can adjust.
One thing I noticed that came out today was, so everyone, I mean, we've talked about it before. So DC did the New 52. A couple of years ago. They did this event called Flashpoint and rebooted the entire DC universe. New versions of all the characters. They were selling really well for the first couple of months. Got a lot of people trying them, but then a lot of people subsequently drifted away. And it, like with anything, the things that were doing better, they changed less. They changed like backstory things with Batman, but Batman's always been DC's top seller, so they didn't screw with Batman that much. And Green Lantern was was kind of close behind it and being very popular, so they didn't much screw around with Green Lantern. They changed it a little bit, kind of the general thing. But, I mean, the stories pretty much continued from before Flashpoint. But some of the other characters, they changed them to almost be semi-unrecognizable in the new continuity. And, they brought Barry Allen back, who had been dead since Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they changed the Teen Titans around almost completely. A lot of different things. And it was interesting. I started out reading all 52 of them.
As did I.
John Mayo and I, on the Comic Book Page podcast, we did, for the first couple of months, really, into it. We were reading it. But then I started drifting away. And the longer and longer I got into it, the more I started drifting away. And it wasn't just me, because, where they were actually beating Marvel in sales for the first few months, which was first time that had happened in many years. But then that stopped happening, and they kind of went back to where they were. And at the anniversary of the reboot, they did a September event, because the first issues came out in this September, and they started doing these events. The first year, I think they had 0 issues. Then the next year, they did those, and that did really well. And then this last year, they did what we thought were 3D covers, but they weren't really 3D covers. They were kind of lenticular covers. They went back and forth between 2 images.
Right.
And DC would win that month because of the gimmicks, but they weren't holding on to the readership. Now, that being said, I found it interesting that they actually did get a lot of new fans. The fans broke into a couple of categories. You had your uber hardcore fans. like John Mayo, and I don't know if you know Mike Myers, who does DC Noise and Geek Brunch, and you got your guys who are so hardcore DC fans that they could put out pictures of sandwiches Superman has eaten in 52 comic books, and these guys would buy the comics. So you have those guys, and they're not going anywhere regardless of what they do.
Right. They're lifers.
And then, and I thought I was in that category, but obviously I wasn't, because after I read this stuff for about a year, I just started, I'm done on a lot of the titles. And with any reboot, that's what a company's shooting for. They're shooting for, is the new fan base that I'm going to access larger than the fan base that I lost? Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's much larger. And, you got your people who are going to just stick with it regardless.
Right.
So, their sales are, I won't say they're in the toilet or anything, but they're not, setting any records in general. They set some decent numbers with Batman, but recently Diamond put out the top 100 comics of 2014 by sales, right? And DC, and I'm going from memory here, so I might be off by a position or two, but the top 13 comics were all Marvel, except for the number 2 comic was an issue of Walking Dead. A Batman comic came in at number 14. And you had to go down to about position 32 before there was a DC comic on this list that was not a Batman comic.
Wow. And
it's basically, and Marvel, it was mostly Spider-Man comics and Avengers comics on the, so the entire list was very Batman, Spider-Man, and then Justice League and Avengers centric.
Yeah.
So of the top 100 sellers of the whole year, and then you had a couple of event titles thrown in and stuff, but you got the highest I guess Harley Quinn made it in there. She's sort of a Batman-ish comic, right? She's related to Batman.
Yeah.
The highest DC book that wasn't a Batman or Batman-related book was Superman 32, which is where they brought in John Romita Jr. to do Superman.
Really?
I don't know if you were aware of that. He jumped over to DC and started doing Superman. So that sold really well for that issue, Anyway, and you say, okay, so DC wants to shake things up. I think they're getting to the point where, okay, we need to try something here. So they have this event coming up called Convergence, and it starts. Don't like it. Yeah. And what made me think of this topic after this long rambling introduction was, so DC announced Convergence #1 and the synopses for the first 4 issues exclusive on the web, not on any comic related site, but on Entertainment Weekly. So, Entertainment Weekly got the thing, and Marvel and DC have been doing this for the last several years. They've been going to Entertainment Weekly and USA Today and the Today Show and other kind of things, because the TVs and TV shows and movies are getting a lot of popularity. So they're trying to infuse the media audience into the comics, right? And I hear people say, well, what do you think? Do you think that all the people who are watching the TV shows are going to buy comics? And it's certainly not. I think what the hope is, when you look at the top-selling comic, when they sell the hell out of a comic book, and they only seem to be able to do that lately by having just ludicrous amounts of variant covers and stuff, which means they're not really selling, that many comics to that many different people, but you got the hardcore fans buying multiple copies because you got all these variant covers. Like, for instance, Star Wars #1 came out from Marvel last Wednesday, yesterday, as we were this. And I don't know if you're aware of this too, but once Disney bought Star Wars and Disney owns Marvel, it was kind of like, well, Dark Horse is screwed. Dark Horse had the Star Wars license for years, and it's like, well, why? So basically, Disney non-renewed the Star Wars license with Dark Horse, so Dark Horse was done as of December 31st.
Wow.
So, January 14th, they're slapping out Star Wars #1. Backward all started,
Yep.
as the first Star Wars comic came out from Marvel. And I believe it was said they had more variant covers of this comic than any other previous comic book in history, which would probably put it at, like the 100+ variant covers range.
What?
And, you got comic book fans, you got Star Wars fans, you got like people who are Star Wars fans that would never buy any other kind of comic, but they'll buy Star Wars comics, so they're going to sell the hell out of this comic book. And now they're, so Marvel's got Star Wars, they got Darth Vader coming out, they've got Princess Leia comic coming out. They're going to have an entire corner of the, yeah, there you go. They're going to have an entire corner of Marvel that's just all Star Wars comics. And they're going to be tapping into you'll have comic fans who read that, but I think they're also, they know. I mean, they're tapping into a different sort of fan base that they're now selling comic books to. So this all wraps around into, there are so many more people that will go to the Guardians of the Galaxy movie or the Captain America movie, right? Millions upon millions upon millions of people. I mean, how many people go see that movie? I mean, the $1 billion
millions,
millions, right? So you have, at best, I think, maybe 100,000 people, different people, buying like a totally top-selling comic. And most of the middle-of-the-road comics are selling to somewhere between 20 to 40,000 people. So, when you look at 20 to 40,000, 10 million, it's just like, if you could get 1% of, and then not only that, look at the TV shows now. You got Flash and Walking Dead is the #1 show on TV, right? You got Gotham, you have Green Arrow, you've got Constantine, and they're putting out more and more of these different TV shows, and even this is like back in the day, back when we were reading comics off the spinner rack, right? If a comic sold less than 500,000 copies, they canceled it because it was selling for crap, right? And now if it sells 50,000 copies, it's a success. If it sells 100,000 copies, legitimate copies I'm talking about, not inflated by variants.
Right.
It's a raging success if it sells 100,000 copies. So, look at TV numbers. People watch a TV show that's not, they will cancel a TV show that doesn't have 4 or 5 million people watching, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
2 or 3 episodes and then boom.
Yeah. I mean, you've got literally 10 to 20 to 30 times the number of people watching a TV show as will read a comic book. So I don't think there's any mystery in the fact that all of these, like the companies, they're trying to pander to the people who are watching the TV shows.
Right.
Because if they can get 1% of the people who watch the TV show to buy a comic book, they will double their audience.
Right. The question is, how do they do that? Now, let's take each other out of the equation. I mean, we're the extreme. We've been doing this for 40 plus years, and the comic culture is ingrained in our lifestyles. Let's just take the average family. Little Bobby Jr. is into comics. He likes the movies. How does this play out? How do the companies go in and grab the rest of the family?
They attempt to make the comic book universe as much like the TV universe as possible.
Aha.
When they rebooted Green Arrow, right? Well, what is Green Arrow? You watched the Arrow show, right? Mm-hmm. Does he look like your traditional Green Arrow with the Robin Hood?
Not at all.
Well, what do you think Green Arrow looks like in the comic books right now?
Very muscly.
He looks, he now looks. They've turned him into the Oliver Queen from the TV show.
Huh.
And to the point where Diggle is now a character and Felicity Smoke is now a character.
Wow.
These characters were created for the TV show. They now populate the comic books because they want someone who has watched the TV show to pick up the comic and feel, it's something different, but
right.
It's not completely different, right?
Right, because they did the same thing with Chloe Sullivan in Smallville.
Right.
She was a popular character. They tried to kill her off on the show. The fans revolted. They brought her back, and not only did they bring her back, but they started featuring her in the comic.
Yeah, and none of that's in but Superman doesn't actually have a show right now, so they're not as worried about that. But it's just it's not surprising when they try to look at now they have an agent. Phil Coulson is now a character at Marvel, right?
Yeah.
Nick Fury is now black at Marvel. Old Nick Fury is pretty much gone, and I think he's a son by somebody somewhere. So there's a black Nick Fury who's buddies with Phil Coulson, and they hang around, and they've been morphing it in action over the last few years, and now they just launched the week of Christmas or the week of New Year's. They launched the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Comic book series. It's got Phil Coulson and Melinda May and different kinds of. They're comic book versions of the character. It's not exactly like the TV show, and it's kind of cool because you take they have missions that they go on, and since they don't have to worry about paying Chris Hemsworth or getting Robert Downey Jr. to come and be on their show or whatnot. They now can, hey, Iron Man, come do something with Phil Coulson, and just like they can bring in whatever Marvel characters they want to help them out on these different missions that the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. go on. And, bringing that all together, it kind of wraps in with what we were talking about, I think it was it last time, about how they're turning the Inhumans into the mutants of the Marvel Universe, because that's what is kind of the active go-to in the Disney/Marvel controlled movie/television franchises, right? And Marvel is going nuts with this stuff now because they've got a Daredevil series coming out on Netflix. They're having a Jessica Jones Alias series. They're doing all different kinds of series. And as time goes by, you're going to see the characters and the feel of these books kind of blurring together because they're looking for that crossover.
They're creating an actual Marvel universe.
Right. And they are looking for it because, and it makes sense. It's just, you have this audience of hardcore comic fans that read the comics, but you know what? I mean, other than the fact that you can take a lot of these guys and sell them 5 copies of the exact same thing because you put a different cover on it, which is always good for padding the corporate wallet, and they do it vigorously, with speakers and stuff. I mean, they really know. They've got, little finger, they got the fanboy wrapped around their finger. They know how to reach into the wallet of the hardcore fanboy and just extract dollar bills all day long. And they do it as much as they possibly can. But that is not going to play with Joe Q Public. Right. Joe Q Public, you got to give them something else. I mean, but you can do a lot of that stuff. I mean, you can have a very cool, stories. The review on Comic Spectrum for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I didn't write it. It was well done, though, because, the premise of it was, it's like, hey, it's the TV show with an unlimited budget. It just, again, you can bring in all these different characters and do so many more cool things in and around the Marvel Universe with it. Hey, why not?
Yeah.
Let's do these things and let's try to get the crossover. And then, digital comics is just another facet of this marketing, because you've now taken out of the equation that, hey, all this stuff sold out at the comic shop. Or the comic shop didn't order this book, or they didn't order enough of this book, or whatever.
I've never thought of that. It's
digital
always in stock.
Never sold out.
Wow. That's wild. That's wild. Now, it's interesting you bring this up because, hey, there you go.
See this? Okay. This comic came out last week. Timed perfectly, right? And it's no accident. I don't believe in accident. I believe in smart marketing people, right? When did they start putting the Ant-Man trailer?
Last Wednesday.
Last week, right? And guess what? By the time I walked into my comic shop on Saturday, this comic was sold out.
Wow.
I had pre-ordered it, right? So I had a copy, but it wasn't on the rack, and they ordered the hell out of it, and it was sold out.
Now some of pushing the horse.
Some of it is speculation, right? Some of it is, it's going to be, the night, because anything that goes with a movie, it fluctuates the prices on the comics market. The Ant-Man movie and the comic are both about Scott Lang. It was actually a really good comic. I enjoyed it quite a lot. And I think it was very well done. I mean, they kind of start the story. You can pick this up. It's not like you're walking in on the middle of something. You read this comic. It's got everything you need to know is inside the 2 covers of this comic. They got Tony Stark guest starring in it. People who just would wander in and pick this comic up. I guarantee you have all seen the Iron Man movie, at least one of them, and know who Tony Stark is, and they see that and they're familiar. There was a lot to this comic. It's not just, it's Ant-Man anyway, so it's not big superhero action, but he's got trouble with his ex-wife, and he's trying to work, visitation rights for his daughter Cassie, and there's a lot of human interest, and just the story was a lot more than someone is going to read this comic and it's not, hey, it's just 2 guys in costumes beating the living stuffing out of each other. There was actual substance to it, an actual story there, which again makes it stand apart from what somebody would have thought a comic book was that remembers the comic book from when they were 10 years old. I mean, even in the 90s, pretty much all comics were just people beating the living crap out of each other.
Especially the 90s, yeah.
Yeah.
Grim and
But
gritty.
I mean, that was pretty much just how comics were, and it's what comics have sort of been moving away from. So it's actually healthy, I think, in many ways. You have more mature storytelling, and mature not in a, hey, let's put some boobs in there and cussing. It's just, when he's talking about, he's had relationship issues with his ex-wife and visitation and, things like this. These are mature themes, right?
Yeah, but this is something that's not really new. I mean, I think Marvel has always had an undercurrent of maturity.
Right.
They didn't. DC, they definitely dumbed down their stories to the 9-year-old boy. Marvel, they went the other direction, and
college age. Right?
It's that thread. It's that common thread that makes the Marvel universe so cohesive, and the fact that they can capitalize on it to this day still. It's a good thing.
Yeah. So, this has been, it's all kind of culminating in this thing where you look at it and the major companies are pandering to not necessarily the traditional comic shop. Pandering's maybe not a flattering word, but I think it's accurate in this case.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And you can extend it, right? That even today, Image announced direct to the public subscriptions to all their comics. You can go to the Image website and get subscriptions to their comics, and they'll send them directly to your house.
Huh.
And some people were asking me on some forums that I'm on there. Well, they weren't asking me particularly, although as I start chiming in on threads, someone will say, hey, what do you think about this? But, someone's like, well, what was, didn't they do subscriptions before and the subscriptions finally petered out and went away? Well, so I think subscriptions were big back in the day when, we've talked about buying comics off the newsstand, right?
Yeah, but I had subscriptions too.
Right, but here's the thing. We've talked about how hit or miss it was to get a comic off the newsstand, and you might, like myself, right? I never got Spider-Man 121 because it just wasn't at the liquor store near my house, and I got it years later. I traded for it, right? Mm-hmm. And same thing. You would miss comics, so people would get subscriptions so they wouldn't miss a comic. What really was the downfall of the subscription system was the rise of the comic shop.
Exactly.
You would have a comic shop, and the comic shop would always have the comic that you wanted in stock. But, and here's where the face of the comic industry has been changing over the years. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was mostly Marvel comics and some, there were indies and stuff, but comics were a lot cheaper, and it wasn't a problem. Everything was non-returnable. So, you'd buy the comics and you'd have them on the rack. Mm-hmm. More and more expensive the comics are getting. Today, you have a comic that's $3.99. If you're a store, I mean, you're getting 50% off, maybe 55, 60% off. You're still laying out a couple of bucks per comic, right? Mm-hmm. If you make a mistake in ordering comics, and
it'll kill you,
you cannot. You worked at a comic shop, right?
Yeah. Let me tell you what one of our biggest mistakes was, and that was X-Men 1. It was one of the first.
The Jim Lee one, right?
Yeah. I think 5 different covers, and I believe that we ordered heavy on every one of those covers to the tune of, I don't know, maybe 100 books per.
But even back then, that book was what, like $1.50 cover price?
Yeah, and it sold well. It didn't sell anywhere near what we thought it would, and those books just sat there, and they just sat in boxes. I've got millions of them. You can
still find them, right?
Yeah.
Just the thing, though, but making that mistake for a couple of hundred of those comics, it was a couple of $100 lost. Right?
In 80s money.
I mean, comic shops are getting really conservative on ordering comics, and it's like they only have so much working capital. Most of the people still who go to comic shops, even though indie books are selling better and better, and by indie, again, there's indie and there's, wonky small press, self-published stuff, which is great, but that's outside the conversation. I'm talking about Image, IDW, Dark Horse, Dynamite, Boom, etc. The mid-tier publishers, which some people consider mainstream, but realistically, the people who go to comic shops, by and large, my observation, are still superhero addicts. The majority of them. And a lot of those superhero addicts will buy some Image comics, some Dark Horse, some this, some that, right? A lot of them would buy a lot of Star Wars comics from Dark Horse. Well, that's sales that Dark Horse doesn't have anymore because now they're just buying more Marvel comics. But a lot of these shops, lately, they don't order that many, and like popular Image books come out and they sell out within the first week. When I worked for the magazine and book distributor, I was designing their software, right, for their upgrade. They put books out on newsstands. They put magazines and comic books out and paperback books at newsstands, at grocery stores, liquor stores, airport, etc. Those stores did not order from, and I don't think this was true of even back in the day, when we were buying our comics at 7-Eleven or whatever. The guy who owned 7-Eleven was not filling out a form saying,
not at all.
It was just like this bundle of stuff would show up.
Yeah, exactly.
And put out on the rack, and it's like he had no idea what was coming.
And the reason I know that is because if I went in looking for a specific issue, like if I knew that I had Daredevil 179 and I needed 180, and if I went and asked him, he would have no clue. Don't look at the rack. I don't know what's out there. I don't do that. It's like, all right. You're absolutely. A big truck would roll up, bundle would get thrown out, and that's it.
So that was what we did. We, and the software was meant to track and analyze what was selling at different locations so that you would put more of the kind of thing that sold into a store and less of the stuff that didn't sell. Right? And you would track things like when you got returns, because you go and you take things off the rack, right? You actually always wanted, the best possible case was you took back a single copy of a magazine. Because if you ever had bare wire and something sold out, that is lost sales. Because you don't know how many people wanted to buy that and they couldn't buy it.
Right.
Now, if you bring back 5 copies, well, that was a waste, right? You put too many copies there. But if there's 1 copy left, that's ideal because you don't have bare wire.
That makes sense.
So this is the phenomenon is like so many comic shops are getting that bare wire phenomenon because some book come out, it'll be really popular. Even this Ant-Man book that is sold out, you go into the comic shop, I'm sold out. By the first Saturday, the book came out on Wednesday. I went to the shop Saturday. It was sold out. Lost sales. How many people went into that store and would have bought that comic book, but it wasn't there for them to buy? Right? Now, Image stepping back and saying, happening. It's just like these stores are not ordering that, and we understand because Image, if I'm a shop, a shop only has so much working capital. to buy comics. And Marvel and DC are cranking out the variant covers on Star Wars #1, and they're cranking out Darth Vader #1, and DC is cranking out Convergence, and they're going to have a whole bunch of variant covers to that. And guess what? Those dollars are now tied up, and what happens is the shop knows, hey, I'm going to sell X number of copies of Death of Wolverine. So, you know what? My money's now tied up, and I'm not going to order 30 copies of some new Image title that I don't have any idea if that's going to sell or if I'm going to eat 25 copies of it if I order.
So I'm just going to order 10.
So I'm going to order 10.
Right.
And they order 10, the 10 sell out. They might have sold 11. They might have sold 50. Who knows? So...
This is actually really scaring me a little bit because I never really gave the subscription thing much thought. I mean, I did it back when I did it out of necessity, and like you said, the comic shops came along, and I just dismissed it. I was just like, whatever. I had assumed, and I know you shouldn't assume, that there was always that option. But right now, if Image can make this work, what is the advantage for the LCS? There is none. This is another nail in their coffin.
Well, it's interesting because, so let's look at it on the big picture. Is Image is offering this program. What is the biggest overhead item to a mail order business?
Transportation.
Shipping, right? You got to pay the post office to deliver these things, plus packing material and labor to stick them in envelopes and deal with that stuff. Well, on one hand, this is it would seem to be a large expense, but on the other hand, if I'm Image and I am selling through Diamond, a store gets the books at 50% off. Diamond is, got their 10% on it. So, realistically, the store gets what? I mean, the publisher gets 35-40% of the cover price.
Right.
So they're not getting anywhere near that $4 cover price or $3, whatever it is, right? So now we have a dynamic where if Image can sell direct to the consumer...
Holy shit.
But what they've done, because I went and I looked at their site, it comes out, I'm going to look at it. If you buy one title, it's full retail.
Right.
If you buy a couple of titles, and I should look at it really quick.
Pull this up, because this is amazing.
Let me pull the site up, just because I don't want to give bogus info here. But it's interesting because they have tiered discounts, which is actually very, very smart. And they also have, you have to pay shipping too.
Oh, so you're paying, oh, wow.
You're paying shipping on top of the cost of the subscription. So, if I buy a comic, I'm going to click on Chew. Heard of Chew? It's a very popular one. From $35.88. That's full retail, right? Book is $2.99, 12 issues, going to be $36 less the pennies, $35.88, right? Now, subscribe to at least one title, it's $35.88 plus shipping. Two titles, $32.29, which is a 10% discount. At least four titles, $28.70, that's a 20% discount. If you do 10 titles or more, $25.12, 30% off cover price.
That's LCS territory. That's like a typical discount.
But here's where it starts getting a little weird. Shipping starts as low as $1 per issue, $12 per 12 issue subscription. Learn more here. Now I click here. First class mail, $1 per issue, 24 for 2, 36 for 3, etc. Comes first class mail, whatever. First class mail with bags and boards.
Oh, Jesus.
$3.25 for the first one, and $1.25 for each additional one. Okay. Now, if you, for some reason, are jonesing for priority 2-day delivery, it's $5.50 per issue, $75 per each additional issue.
That makes sense.
And priority with bag and board, it's $5.75 plus $1 per issue. So, basically, you order some books, you get the money off, but then you give it back on the shipping. So, realistically, I step back and I'm like, who are they marketing this to? They're marketing this to someone who is not a regular comic shop customer. Because if you are a regular comic shop customer, most comic shops, and I won't say everyone because there are some obstinate dinosaur idiot store owners who won't do a pull list, right?
Yeah.
But most comic shops that are run by even a slightly competent person will offer a pull list. So if I want every issue of Chew, I go in, I start up a pull list, I want every issue of Chew, they're going to order my issue of Chew, everybody else who has a pull list, their issue of Chew, and 2 copies for the rack. Whatever, right? The person who gets screwed in this scenario is Joe customer who doesn't, for some reason, want to have the commitment of a pull list, never asked and doesn't understand that there are such things as pull lists, and they just continually wander into comic shops looking for the comic that they want, only to be told that they're sold out because what happens? Everyone who had a pull list got their copy,
right? And
then the first tiny handful of other people who came walking into the shop, mostly on Wednesday, got the copy that went out on the rack. And the guy who goes into the comic shop because they have a job, and they go in on Saturday or they go in on, the evening or something. Oh, sorry, we're sold out. Or they don't even know that the comic exists or, whatever. Or they go in and say, man, I heard these really great things about Chew. I don't have any copies of that. They all sold out. And then the person goes away and they're all depressed. So this kind of person, they might find out, Image tells them, oh, here, now you can subscribe. Look, discount, shipping, blah, blah. It actually comes out nice because if you order a few books, you're going to get it for about what you would pay full price at the comic shop anyway, right? But now you're going to get it. You don't have to worry about missing it. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to drive to some comic shop. None of that business.
See, here's the scenario that it has been rolling around in my head since we started talking about this. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is better at marketing than Disney. Suppose, I've got a new earpiece, that's why I keep fiddling with it. Suppose Disney decides we want to have everybody on the planet Earth read Ant-Man. So we're just going to just blanket it, and we're going to do crazy subscriptions, and we're going to put this book in the hands of everybody that we can put it into. And they could possibly do it. And there's really nothing that the LCSs can do. Because, yeah, I understand what you're saying, subscription versus LCS. But we're in areas where there are LCSs. I got to imagine there's huge swaths of this country where there isn't, or you have to drive an hour.
True.
These guys, these guys are better served by the horrible mail service that we have here.
Well, here's the thing, though, and here's the part that these guys don't understand is, so, okay, Image, they're offering a great service, and they're targeting people who are, I think, semi-naive about the whole comic market.
Or young. Maybe
or,
just,
whatever,
yeah.
Right? Now, if you know anything about it, it's like, if I am now willing to get my comics in the mail, right? And the people who don't want to go mail order are the people who are so hardcore, that they're like standing at the comic shop, scratching on the window, they're taking off of work or, whatever. I mean, they don't have a job. They're just like on Wednesday, they're at the comic shop, and then they run home and they read their stack of comics all Wednesday. And by the end of Wednesday, they're done. I mean, and then they just talk about them the whole rest of the week. There are a lot of people like that on the internet. I mean, it's like, it's amazing how many people on forums that I'm on, like by the time I get home from work on Wednesday, these people are already discussing every single comic that came out. Well, at least the mainstream ones, right? Not necessarily a lot of the things I read, so it doesn't bother me that much. But, and mail order to them, it's like, why would I mail order it? I mean, I gotta have it like Wednesday. I gotta have it, and I gotta read it.
Yeah, but I picture parents too. Like, I did subscriptions for the boys for Mad Magazine and the Archie digests. So they were getting digests in the mail like 2-3 times a week, and it was very exciting. Even though we could go right up to Walmart and get them right off the rack. There was something magical about it showing up in the mail.
For a kid, yes.
For a kid, yeah.
I do not believe that Image is marketing kid. You're not buying Bitch Planet for your okay? I mean, if you look at the books that Image is putting out, I have a hard time believing, you're getting Bitch Planet and Chew about, eating parts of people, and Elephant Man and God Hates Astronauts and, Black Science, Deadly Class and Nail Biter about serial killers. Nice. And,
good wholesome stuff.
You're not buying these for your little kid, right?
I can see like an issue of Red Book with a subscription form for Guardians of the Galaxy coming down the road. Hey, moms, you like the movie? And your kids will like it. Here's a subscription. You won't have to go to that nasty shop.
Marvel and DC actually do have subscriptions.
Oh, do they?
Even
still?
I had subscriptions to DC Comics. I still have 2 issues left on my Action Comics subscription. Because they were cheap. I mean, there was a coupon. I got an Action Comics subscription for, it was about $1.25 an issue, including mailing. Wow. I mean, it was like literally $15 or something for this subscription, and the cover price is $3.99. I mean, it comes like, a little bent corner, a little tweaked up sometimes. It's like $1. What do I want? I'm getting this comic, and it's exactly the scenario you were painting of, I'm paying for that comic what Image wants to charge for shipping.
Right.
The comic. Right? But what I'm trying to get at is they are explicitly marketing to people who don't know that much about it, because if you knew about it and you were willing to get them in the mail, guess what? Discount comic book service. Where have I been getting my comics for the last 9 years? If I wanted to get 10 Image comics, I guarantee you that, by the time I pay all the shipping on it, I can get them from DCBS, and they're 40% off cover.
Yep.
From DCBS. And you know what? I can throw in a couple of Marvel comics on there. I can get my Star Wars comic in that bundle. Once you pay the shipping, And they're not, even Image, they're not sending these all out the day that they come out. They send you one package a month.
Oh, yeah, it's cheaper to ship that way.
So, I mean, to me, it's like, you know what? If you are willing to get comics in the mail, go to DCBS and get comics in the mail.
Now when you put it that way, I understand what you're saying, because now it just seems shady.
Yeah.
Hey, kid, come here. Hey, you like those comic books? I got them.
For a kid, now, Image, and that's where it's kind of puzzling to me on Image. I mean, they have to be purposely targeting the person who's feeling disenfranchised because they have either been on the internet and hearing all these great things about Image books, but they don't have a comic shop near them, or they do have a comic shop, and every time they walk into the comic shop, or many of the times they walk in, it's sold out and they can't get the comic. And it's like, you know what? These people will not sell you our comics. We will sell you our comics ourselves. Now, once you move beyond that and you start actually learning about this stuff, take the step up and get like a proper mail order service. Go to DCBS. Midtown Comics has got a pretty good mail order service as well.
Yep.
There are several. I have a page on Comic Spectrum that's got a whole bunch of different mail order services on it. And you can basically, each person should just go and look at all of them if you're wanting to do that, and pick the one that works best for you. I mean, I can recommend DCBS because I've been using them for so long, and they've
I used them for years also. Right. Yeah. Cameron,
just great service. I mean, it's just the other thing. Even with the pull list with the comic shop, I mean, you've both worked in comic shops and bought from comic shops. I used to have every month at least one or two pick list errors from my comic shop. You just, oh, wait a minute, where is this book? I have no idea. I'm supposed to have this book. Why isn't it there?
I was a hardcore collector for most of my life, as you know, up until probably 2005. Around 2005, actually 2003 to 5, somewhere in that range, I moved to Albany, different part, so I had to change shops. Went to one LCS, started a pull list, went the first month, perfect. Second month, missing an issue here or there, no big problem. Third month, who are you? What are you talking about? Gone. I'm off the list. For no reason. All right, I'll just, take my business elsewhere. No hard feelings. Went to another shop. Same thing. And this aggravated me to the point where I gave up. I went, first month, got my books. Second, now, it wasn't a huge list either. It was probably 45 to 50 books a month. Not huge, not small.
That actually is a huge list, though. I mean, it's not like the kind of books that I buy, but there are the majority of comic fans, I would say. Let's look at this in a couple of tiers, right? Just the fact that anyone who's on the internet, watching a podcast about comics, being on a forum about comics, talking about comics, you are kind of like up a few notches into the more uber fan category, right? Just kind of by definition. I think that anyone who's reading 40 comics a month is typically going to, at some point, cross that threshold and like gravitate towards and discover, online fandom and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But even amongst online fandom, I find that there are a tremendous number of people, in fact, the majority of the people that I interact with on lists that I, are reading far fewer than 40 or 50 books a month.
See, I can't even wrap my head around that.
I mean, they are reading because they talk about how much money they spend on comics, and it's like, and you can back it into it, right? And it's like, because they're buying at shops and they're talking about spending $80 to $100 a month, which is not a insignificant amount of money, but $80 to $100 is going to buy you like 20 comic books, 25 comic books, right? I mean, they're $4 a piece. Right. It's for the most of the comic books. I mean, you're maybe getting 30 comics if you're buying $3 comics.
My monthly bill from DCBS was probably $130, $140.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. It's like you can get more comics for the same money. Like if you're going to a local shop. You're getting the books on the Wednesday, so that's great. Talk about them immediately and all that kind of stuff. You will pay full retail price. Some shops will give you a discount, percent.
20% sometimes.
Whatever. But, you're going to pay, so you're buying, so you spend $100, you will read 20 to 30 comics a month. And that's what a lot of these guys, they're spending the point where I think that, probably a more typical fan is reading in the 15 to 30 range.
Okay.
When you get up to about 40, that's the thing, though, is if doing nothing else other than switching to DCBS, it's turning into a DCBS commercial, sorry, but, if you go to DCBS, you can now spend that same money, and instead of getting 20 to 30 comics, you're now getting 40 to 50 comics for the same exact money. So what I have discovered is that people who make the switch to buying online, they typically don't save any money. What they end up doing is they increase. They will spend the same amount of money, but they will increase the scope of what they're able to read for that same amount of money.
Well, let's not forget in-stock trades also.
Yeah. Oh, they're well, I just bought a couple of things off of in-stock trades the other day. I gave away my Overstreet grading guide, the new version that I got from DCBS for, I don't know, like half off or something, but I gave it to somebody who wanted one and was just totally fascinated by it. So I had to buy myself a new one. So I went to In-Stock Trades, and it was like 25% off there, but it was still cheaper than Amazon. And then I threw in an extra. PS Art Books does these really nice reprints of these old 50s things. So I picked up a reprint of something from them. But, they have phenomenal prices on the more mainstream stuff, have even better prices, but even some of the more weird fringe stuff, I mean, I can find from them for 25% off where I can get it for no discount at all anywhere else.
Right.
Because not even Amazon, on some of the fringe stuff, Amazon gives you like 25 or 30% off on really popular high-selling stuff, right? But they have virtually no discount on like really kind of low-end stuff with low volume.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Wow. But it just summing it up. I mean, I think that I'll do one other thing, and that is conventions. I look at conventions, and conventions are making the same shift. Conventions, for the most part, are money-making operations. How do you make money? You sell tickets, right? You need to get more people there. How are you going to get a lot of people into your convention? I guarantee you it's not going to be by featuring comic books. I mean, if you have looked at the panels and the guests and anything like that at almost any convention, you will see that they are extremely lately slanted towards movie stars,
TV, yeah.
TV, weird pop culture stuff like, Nerdist.com and, Chris Hardwick and his gang and all these guys who are, it's like even podcasts now, it used to be back in the old days, podcasts were all just guys like us sitting in our attic, doing a podcast because we love it. Now it's like Adam Carolla and Kevin Smith and all these celebs and, people who make an industry out of it, and they sell advertising and they have YouTube channels for it, and they're totally monetizing the thing, and it's just another corporate thing, and they're kind of like minor, fringe celebs, and these guys are all featured at the cons.
Yep.
You have cosplay is big, and great, but that's the kind of stuff that cons focus on. Cons are pretty much completely uninterested, except fringe fashion, that it's like kind of like the comic companies themselves. The comics are great IP that allow them to do all this stuff that's actually going to make them money. But concentrate on comic books. Who gives a crap about that stuff? It's just so many fewer people. People are not going to go to and people who will go to a con for a comic book thing, they're going to go to the con for
the experience.
Well, also, they're going to go because they want to buy some stuff, they want to get autographs, or they want to meet the hot current creator.
Right.
Or the classic, they might go because Len Wein is there and he created Wolverine. Something like that. I want to get Len Wein's autograph and say thank you for creating Wolverine. He's the greatest in the world. That is something. But it's just, does somebody want to go just to hear somebody talk about just plain old comics? They can give a crap about that stuff.
You think that's why Reed Expo just bought Emerald City Comic Con?
Yeah. Hey, well. I will say, with the exception of San Diego Comic-Con, because it's a non-profit and it's fan-run, but even San Diego, when I look at San Diego and, I kind of speak in their favor because people say that it's all very commercial and Hollywood and all that. That is true. They have all that stuff. They've got the Mythbusters. They've got all the celebs. They've got the Big Bang Theory people. They've got all this, stuff there. But they also have a lot of small rooms just jam-packed with panels that are about nothing but pure comics and indie comic creators and all that kind of stuff. And I go to those, and I'm sitting in the room with 20 other people that love this comic book, and we're listening to the creator talk about that comic book. And that same thing happens at WonderCon, because WonderCon is also owned by the same people who run San Diego Comic-Con. You do not find those panels at a Reed Pop convention or at a Wizard World convention.
Right.
You just have the ones that are, let's have the big hoopla, and, it's like Batman 75 years, and it's,
right.
Heroines of cosplay, come see these girls with their boobs falling out, and I like to see girls' boobs as much as the next guy, probably more so if you ask my wife.
That's another episode.
That's another episode. It's just, that's what brings in attendees. Yep. And it's the same thing. That's what drives sales. That's what makes money. That's what makes the world go round. Comics, conventions, all of that stuff, it's skewing towards media because media is there right now. It's driving it in, and just like, hey, let's jump on the train while we can and make money off of it.
Yeah, it's
some
weird.
point
it's almost,
that train will go away. It'll pull out of the station.
It's basically we've gone full circle. If you look at the books that we were reading back in the 70s, you would definitely get movies, TV shows that would be adapted into comic books, and they would usually fail. You know, there are some exceptions, you know, Star Wars and a few others. But now it seems as if the comic is creating the movie, which is creating the comic. So it's turning into a vicious cycle, but it is interesting, and I'm glad that we are at an age where we get to sit back, watch, and enjoy all of this, because if you had talked to young Rick and Bob back in the day, I would have never have guessed that any of this would have ever happened.
Oh, no.
You know?
I mean, just, you know, looking at just sitting and watching, you know, The Flash. I mean, The Flash TV show now compared to the John the Ship Flash TV show, which was a decent show. I mean, I
liked the show.
I enjoyed that show, you know, but the production values on the current one are watching Arrow, watching Walking Dead, watching Gotham, you know, they're doing iZombie, for gosh sake.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like it lasted like 18 issues at Vertigo. I don't know how well that'll do. But, you know, it's just like they're making a Daredevil series on Netflix. Yeah. You know, it's just, I don't get Netflix. Am I going to buy Netflix just to see Daredevil? Probably not. But, you know, it'll come out on DVD and I'll be able to see it then.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. All right. Well,
Golden Age, sir.
Yeah. So, before we go, where can I go to get all this information again? What website?
ComicSpectrum.com.
Yes.
I've added a new secret page that I have not advertised much, so I'll premiere it here on under Bob's blog area. I've got a countdown to complete page where I'm tracking how many comics I need to complete my Silver Age collection. I'm down to 39 Marvel comics.
Nice.
To complete my, and this is superheroes, right? I mean, I don't have, not romance.
Two Gun Kid and Millie the Model.
No, I got, you know, hundreds of Millie the Models and Two Gun Kid and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, of the actual, I was surprised when I actually counted, you know, that's outside of X-Men. Mm-hmm. And I need 60 X-Men comics.
Wow.
I need 39 of everything else.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And I did the same thing on DC. I need quite a few more on DC just because their Silver Age goes back farther. It goes back into the, like, 56 or so.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and it's like, you know, it's like all these issues of action and Superman and Batman and Detective and World's Finest. I mean, it kills me because there's just adventure comics. I mean, there's a bunch of those issues that I don't have, but I'm actually down pretty low if you count. I mean, I only need one issue of Green Lantern. I'm down to under 10. I think maybe 8 on Flash.
Nice.
4 issues of Aquaman. I need 1 Hawkman comic from Brave and the Bold. You know, it's very small. But anyway, I'm keeping track of it now, so you can kind of look at this page and it's like, oh, what's Bob up to now?
Also known as Bob's wish list. So if you have that copy laying around.
Someone sent me, this is the first for me, is like someone on Facebook just messages me and he says, do you have Showcase number 20? And I'm like, looking at it like, no, it's like Rip Kirby, like Time Master.
Yeah.
Rip Hunter, not Rip. Rip Kirby's the detective. And I'm like, no. And he's like, oh, do you want one? I got it, and I don't want it. You know, like, okay, what can I send? So he sent me that, and I sent him a stack of comics off of my slush pile. And I got...
this is the pay it forward thing, right?
Yeah. Well, no, that was different.
Oh,
that kind of helped inspire that. You know, so I'm like, hey, you know, somebody did something nice for me, so now I'll send out some things to people.
You know what? I'm going to do the same thing. Because somebody years ago sent me a big stack of Archies. And I'm talking a big stack, and it was all Silver Age, I'd say from like 59 to 63. Just real nice books. It was during the boys' Archie phase, so they've kind of grown out of it. So maybe I'll just return the favor and send off some stuff. I'll, decide what. I love that. Look at that.
I got this yesterday. This is a new one.
What is that? That's 1,000 pages.
$7.95 through DCBS.
I'm gonna order that as soon as I get off.
Look at this.
That's
panel right here.
Beautiful.
That is
Look at
that is 1950s pandering. It's Veronica in the bathtub.
Little fan service there, as they say nowadays.
Betty fan service. That's exactly right. And she's like in her underwear in the next panel. Like
some of those strips got a little bit under racy. That's a whole nother episode.
I'm like, boy, I can understand why a boy might have read Archie comics in the 19th.
Hey, it's one of. I was a big Ethel fan, but no.
We've gone on, so.
All right, my friend.
Time, sir.
I will talk to you soon. That's it for this episode, and I will try to get this one out immediately.
I still have to post the other one, so give me a couple of days anyway.
All right, sounds good. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.